Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond Sunday, where we desire to take the conversation beyond Sunday and deeper and looking at the text and what we're hearing from God. And this morning we've got Shay. Shay, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm great, actually.
Nice. It's a
Yeah,
good way to be on a Monday.
sure. I'm going to name it and claim it.
Okay. 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 So
No, I'm great.
different.
I'm great. Before we dive into our conversation, take a look at this video. All right, welcome back. What's Shay, as we get into this for this week, what was the big idea from this week as we're into the second Sunday of Lent?
Yeah. So in this series, we're looking at character traits, characteristics. Who is this guide on this journey? And so this week we're talking about covenant. This is a God of covenant. And so, yeah, so for us, we were mostly in Genesis 15 and then using Psalm 27 kind of as an application piece. So I don't know. I think you were similar. You were in Psalm
I mean,
27.
I touched on Genesis 15, mostly just the looking at covenants through Scripture and then landing with Jesus in the new covenant.
Right.
But utilizing Psalm 27, that especially there at as you had noted, the chiastic structure within that psalm, that in the middle of that, in 7 and 8, is there's something to stop and to recognize, something to focus in on. And so 7 being, hear my voice when I call, Lord, be merciful to me and answer me. And then verse 8, my heart says to you, seek his face, your face, Lord, I will seek. And and really this idea that the new covenant with Jesus offers us the opportunity to do that, and with confidence and um, certainty is probably not the right word, but confidence and like I can seek the face
Boldness.
of God. Yeah, I'm coming into your presence. I desire to seek your face,
Yeah.
um, and to see you and to be known by you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's and that was kind of that's where I went, or that's where I landed with the application. Because what Genesis 15 shows us or reminds us is that not only is God a covenant making and covenant keeping God, but he keeps both sides of the
Yeah.
covenant, which uh, we spent a lot of time diving into covenants in that context, in that historical, cultural context, because we don't really have an understanding for what that looks like for us now, in the same way. Um, but this recognition of God's like, hey, I'm gonna cover both of these parts. And that's what we see Jesus do, right? Jesus in the new covenant does that for us, but in a really like specific way. We see that in the story of Abraham. And so for me, that was the piece of like, okay, so actually God's going to handle both of that. So what is my role in this
Yeah.
relationship then? If God's going to take care of both sides of this covenant relationship, what's my role? And that's where Psalm 27, that treasure in the middle of the chiasm, was like, just seek me. And there's echoes. I think David's echoing Deuteronomy 4 in that, which ties seek my face, all like, I will hold this covenant that was made by oaths, but seek my face.
Mhm.
Um, and so for me, that was the like, my role in the relationship, in this covenant relationship that I'm in with God. My role is to seek him, and actually even like then okay, so then what does that mean, and where do we seek him, and how do we seek him? And so we talked about some of that practical stuff. But even like I love the I'm just looking at it right now, the New Living, Psalm 27 in the New Living translation, verse 8 says, "My heart has heard you say, 'Come and talk with me.' And my heart responds, 'Lord, I am coming.'" So even just that, there's something in that language that's so it's just so relational. Like just
Yeah. And invitational.
come and sit down and
Yeah.
talk with me. And that response, like that heart response of like, yes, I'm coming. I'm on my way. It's like that when you know you're gonna go see a friend and like, I'm coming, I'm on my way. And I know it's gonna be good. I don't know what we're gonna talk about. I don't know what we're gonna do necessarily, but I know there's gonna be good and joy and delight in that. And I'm on my way. I'm coming.
Yeah. Yeah, to the how David ends that psalm in verse 13 and 14. Really, I was holding on to this, and that's probably, I guess, the piece that's still like sticking with me. I didn't necessarily touch on this on Sunday, but when he says in verse 13, "I'm still confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord." This hope that I read in that verse of I'm going to see the goodness of God in the land of the living before I enter and approach the throne room of heaven and of uh, redeemed and a new body and
Mm.
all of that, and face to face with Jesus. That this hope that exists here in verse 13 and then the 14, and like, okay, wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord. Uh,
Yeah.
that that piece of like there's hope here. There's we're gonna see it. My eyes will perceive and see the goodness of God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Which, if Psalm 27 does has this chiastic sort of shaping, then the flip side of that, not the flip side of that, but how it kicks in there is the Lord is the light of my salvation, and whom shall I fear? Right, this
Mm.
question, whom shall I fear? If the Lord is the light of my salvation, the Lord is my stronghold of my life, and whom shall I be afraid? This repeated, like, who shall I fear? Whom shall I be afraid? If this is true about God, that He's the light of my salvation, that He's the Lord of the stronghold in my life. Very strong truths about who God is, His character, His nature. If we're holding on to these truths, then like where he finishes there in 13, I'm confident of this. I'll see the goodness of the Lord
Hmm.
in the land of the living.
Yeah, because that chiastic structure, the beginning and the end of this psalm, one of the things I was reading, somebody uh labeled it or categorized it. The beginning and the end of this psalm talk about life and living. So how are we living? Living in like the light and the salvation. So why am I afraid? And that idea of confidence in his goodness. And then it moves in as we're moving towards the center, right? So then it moves in talking about enemies and these things that are threatening to us, maybe to the way that we live. And then all of that pointing towards this middle of like, all you actually have to do is just be with me, just seek me. And maybe it's not just be, I mean, that's part of it, I guess. Um, and I again that the way that it's even worded here of like just come and sit and talk with me. And so be with me is part of it. But even I wonder that word seek, and I don't know, I didn't look, so I don't know what the Hebrew is, but um I wonder if some of that too is like look for me in the places that maybe you don't even expect me. Like in the struggle with the enemies, in your everyday life, in those places, um, while you're here in the land of the living. Seek me and look for like I'm not absent. I'm not missing in those places. So look for me there.
Well, and
Um,
two, also it calls out in verse 4, right? This one thing I ask of the Lord is that is what I seek, that I
mm,
may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of the tabernacles and set me high upon a rock. This call back to like it's safe
Yeah.
in the presence of God. He protects us. We find dwelling in His house, right? So the David is calling back to in whatever situation he's currently navigating when he's writing this psalm, whether he's running for his life or from King Saul or from his own son or whoever, that calling back to finding safety, security, just in the presence of God, in the tabernacle, in the tent where they would meet with God in His presence, and that calling back to that, the being with Him and dwelling with God,
Yeah.
abiding with God.
Yeah. Well, and that's I guess that's the other echo of 27 into the story of, well, all of the people that God made covenants with throughout the Old Testament, but in the story of Abram, that idea of like, yeah, you have gone through some things, you're gonna go through some things. And even we read like, I think we read 18 verses yesterday, and even in those 18 verses, we watch Abram like uh wrestle to trust, and then it's like Abram believed him and God counted him righteous for his faith. And then in the very next moment, he's wrestling to trust again. And so it's this in and out that we just watch take place. And so there's some echoes of that where I don't know, I wonder if some of that Abram's like, I think I'm getting this, but then there's that wrestle to trust. The enemies are around, and it's whether it's external or internal,
Yeah.
those things, you know.
Well, because not too often in Scripture does God give His people or a person this much clarity of what's going to take place even when they're gone. I mean, He gives them like they're going to be in, your people are going to be enslaved. He lays out this history of this people that he's going to it's going to come from Abraham's line, and he's like, well, I don't have anybody. My all my inheritance is going to go to my servant of my household. And then God lays out like, and here's
Right. Right. Well, and that's one of the things that sticks out because and uh probably don't have time to unpack all of this, but essentially the way that this is written in the Hebrew, and all of my knowledge here comes from Marty, so shout out to Marty for this. But the way it's laid out in the Hebrew suggests that Abram, so God's like, hey, I'm going to give you a great reward. And Abram's like, that's so cool. You keep heaping blessings on me, but I still don't have the one thing I want. I still don't have a son. Where's all this good stuff going, right? And the way that it's written out indicates that Abram responds to God that way, like, cool, but I don't have a son for inheritance. All my stuff is going to go to this specific servant. And then God's just quiet and He doesn't respond. And we don't know how long that's for, but for whatever length of time, minutes, days, weeks, years, even, we don't know. But then Abram comes back to God and reiterates, like, maybe you didn't hear me, but I don't have a son. And I know you love to talk about tone and don't not reading tone into things, but the way that
are you
Abram,
reading tone in that in
I hear tone from Abram, and maybe it's just because I would have tone if I was saying this, if I'm
okay,
Abram.
okay.
Um, because initially his words, like he even says initially, he's like, "Oh, sovereign Lord." Yes, like I mean, his response is very different. Like,
Yeah, how can I know that I will gain possession of it?
well, even okay, so even before that, yes, but even before that, in verse 2, oh sovereign Lord, what good are your blessings when I don't have this even have a son? He's very wordy. He like explains out who this servant is. And then it's almost like God doesn't speak. And the next thing Abram said is like, you have given me no descendants of my own. One of my servants is going to be my heir. So it's almost like he's like, hey, remember, you made me a promise. With the backstory, right? God makes this promise, and Abram assumes, like, okay, probably I guess it's going to be Lot then. He's going to be at least my relative. But then he's faithful to let Lot like go do your thing. And then he's like, now it's going to a servant. And so what Marty talks about is that um he wonders like if God's like, you actually can't handle all the details of this story, because if I tell you what's coming, you're going to screw this up. And that's exactly what we see happen, right? So Abram comes back God, I don't know if you remember, but I still have this still hasn't happened for me. And then God's like, no, you are going to have an heir. You're going to have an heir directly through your line. But then what we know of the rest of the story is that Abram's
Well,
like,
the
okay,
very
well,
next chapter, right? For the-
right. Well, that's what I mean. He's like, okay, cool. So I believe you, God, but you must mean
yeah.
like my wife is still barren. So you must mean I should take her servant, her Egyptian servant, and have a son that way. And I wonder if God's like, and there's the like you didn't trust the story. And so even in all of that, as God is like, okay, look into the sky, Abram's like, he's like, you're gonna have this land, but your people are gonna be enslaved for 400 years. I, I wonder if God was like, I actually wasn't gonna give you all that information.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like there in 13, right, 13 through 16,
Right.
that's a huge, here's what's coming. Strangers in a country not their own, enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. Um, uh, God's going to punish that nation that they were enslaved in, but afterward they'll come out and be with a great possession. You, however, will go to your fathers in peace and be buried in a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. Like there's the amount of time that God just offered to Abram here of this is the promise I'm making with you, a covenant I'm making with you, and here's some of what's coming.
Right.
Uh, and still, Abram, like, okay, so he goes from this covenant promise with God to then trying to make it happen with Hagar.
Well, I'm trying to make it. Yeah. Um, yep. Um, so yeah, Marty would say, only because I just spent so much time listening to this. Um, he would say that this is because of what took place in Genesis like 12, 13, 14, where all along Abram is struggling to trust the story in that there's a famine in the land. Do you trust me? No, I'm going to go into Egypt. The whole thing with Lot, and then not only that, but he comes out of Egypt and he gets all sorts of things, wealth, riches, all of that, but he also gets people. He also gets his wife gets a specific Egyptian slave. And so, and that is who Abram's going to choose, like Abram Sarai, however whoever does this. But ultimately it's through this woman, this Egyptian woman who that Abram's going to mess up the story a little bit, that God's like, that's not actually what I meant. And so Marty was talking about how the point here is like God's struggle with humanity is not actually to get us out of Egypt. It's to get Egypt out of us. And it's that
Mm-hmm.
idea where God's speaking this like your people, like you are, what I have promised you is going to be true. But they're going to spend 400 years here and the wrestle will continue. Will you trust me? Will you trust this story? And then in the
Yeah,
very next chapter, Abram's like, yes, but this is probably what you meant.
this is what you meant. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of
I'm
it.
certain. I'm certain.
Um,
And even though, but then here, so getting back to this covenant piece, even with all of that stuff, and God knowing all of that to be true, God walks the path and says, I will cover both sides of this covenant.
Yes, yes, that's what I was like. That even proves more of the glory of the new covenant through Jesus, that now he will carry both the promise of God and the peace that humanity is supposed to carry but cannot. And
Right.
so through Jesus, he carries that other covenant peace and comes together. And now this new covenant we live into and is fulfilled through Jesus, that even the walking these covenants out, whether you just look at one, like with Abram and Abraham, or Moses or David, all the way through, that like makes this new covenant even greater of a covenant promise what God is desiring to do with humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I also think, I guess the other thing for me, and I'm even maybe this is clicking for me right now, but if we're looking at this in light of trying to get to know God better. So yes, the covenant piece, there's a lot in that for me, and there's some application and thank God for the new covenant and Jesus. But if I look through this, if I look at this through the lens of like, God, I want to understand you better, like take myself out of it. I want to know you more. The other thing that this shows is that it wasn't just in the new covenant that we see this compassionate, um, pursuing God like that. Because sometimes, and I don't know, I think sometimes we paint this like this is the God of the Old Testament, and then he breaks and he gives us Jesus, and now he's this good God that's loving and kind. But when we like look at this, every single covenant all along the way is evidence of a God who is like has compassion, who desires relationship, who's in pursuit of his people. And we see it even in the story of Abraham, because even before this is before Jesus and the new covenant. So things are not as good as they're
Mhm.
going to be.
Yeah.
But God is still like, I'm going to handle this for you, Abraham. I'm going to handle it. And we see it with the Israelites. We see it all through. And so there's something about that. Maybe what it is for me is it's a reminder that his character hasn't changed. The story of humanity that's been woven throughout history, that we have changed, and the way that he offers us redemption and the access that we now get to have, that's changed, but his character and nature hasn't changed. He's not a God who looked different in the Old Testament than he does in the New Testament or to us today.
Yeah, and even more of that connection too of the Psalm 27 of like, and seek my face. And then like, yeah, your face, Lord, I will seek. I'm
Yeah,
coming. I'm coming. I'm
yeah,
coming to you, to be in your presence, to know you more. More, again, is um even as I walk this out more and more in my life with God, more and more of God is revealed, his nature and character, and it's so good. It's so beautiful. It's so good. It's so full and filling and in awe and wonder and like, okay, God, I really want more. I I really want more of your presence. I want to come to a place to know you in a way that I read in Psalms when David writes, and he's as honest as maybe I hope to be about his relationship with God and the things that they have walked through together, and how God has been so faithful to David in areas of sin, and God has been there in areas of triumph and King of Israel. God has been there in areas of running for his life because people want to kill him, his own son, even like God is there with him. And
hmm
as I read these Psalms, I was like, I hope to have that my connection to you because I'm so enveloped by your presence. I'm so sheltered by it that I'm so cared in that space that I just want to be there more. I'm coming. I'm seeking your face. I'm coming, God.
I mean, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I wonder if there's not that resonates, because that I we just had a conversation earlier, well, I guess this is Monday, last week, I guess, um, where we were talking about even the difference between in human relationships, in friendships or whatever, like there's like uh no relationship, which is terrible. And then there's like texting, and then there's phone calls or Zoom or whatever, and then there's being in person. And we know with anybody that we have relationship with, I think most of us would say like being together in person is the best. That's the best way to be able to be. Those other things are good for in the meantime, but that's the best. And I wonder if that's some of even like even as David's talking, right? One thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting, meditating in the temple. And that's like the Lord, I'm coming. I want to just be with you. But also knowing that I don't that no contact never has to be on the table with God. I guess that's what I'm
Mm,
thinking. And there's moments and there's seasons and there's spaces where I can abide in a way that is like I'm just sitting on the couch with Jesus, and I just get to like I get to fully be there. And that's what my heart desires. Like, Lord, I'm coming, come and talk with me, I'm coming. But also knowing that there's also there's seasons or there's moments where things are getting done and I can be on the phone with him, or there's, like whatever that analogy wants to look like. But uh I wonder if that's some of even this, like this, the now and the not yet. So there will be a day where we experience God's fullness constantly. And that just is what is. And now knowing that I don't ever have to live outside of his presence, I don't ever have to live because of the new covenant. I don't
Mhm.
ever have to live away from him, but
Yeah.
also recognizing that I don't know, maybe just sometimes it looks different, or there's an in and out of that. I don't know.
Well, or a recognition that as Isaiah says, like our God reminding us, my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways.
Hmm.
We don't always perceive what God is doing, or maybe where God is in those moments. Not that we have to live outside of His presence, but we may not be aware of it. And there's for different reasons and circumstances and whatever, but like we may not always be aware of that. And that's where I sense even in David's in his words here, like in verse 7, hear my voice when I call, Lord, be merciful to me and answer me. Like this real desire to be in connection with God. And then we've already read 8, but then he continues on in verse 9, do not hide your face from me. Don't turn your servant, do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my helper. Do not reject me or forsake me, O God, my Savior. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. I sense this
Hmm.
call out to God of like, receive me, take me, and be merciful to me. Hear my voice, and wherever David happens to be, right when he's writing this
Right.
psalm, we, I, yeah, I just sense a real call in David's words here and his communing with God, with his conversation with God, with his talking
Hmm.
to God,
Hmm.
this so desire to be in his presence
Yeah.
and to know where that is. Like seek your face. Like
I'm
I'm,
coming. Where are you?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hear my voice.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that too is reminded this morning. Like, um, if that's my heart cry, Lord, hear my voice. Don't turn away from me. I'm seeking your face. That's the prodigal. That's the father welcoming the son back into his arms and like going out to meet him.
Hmm.
And where the son feels like I don't even deserve to be a servant in my father's household now. And instead, the father takes his robe and clothes him with his robe, takes his ring and puts it on his finger, symbolizing you are a part of this household. You've been far off, but now you're
Yeah.
here, and the father runs out to meet him and to embrace him. And then it's like robe, ring, feast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Well,
kind of God who's a covenant making, covenant keeping God.
and here's the thing about that that's the most powerful for me is that the Father was watching and waiting. And so when in the seasons where I'm not seeking well, God is watching. Like God, and I think was it might have even been on the podcast last week that we talked about this idea of, as a parent in a room,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
I can't see my kid, I'm repositioning myself so that I can see my kid in a busy crowd or whatever. And that idea of God watching and waiting. That there's a song by, oh man, I can't believe I can't remember who it's by. That's silly. It's if I could have anything, and that has been a powerful refrain for me, but the chorus says, every time I catch your gaze, my world starts changing. And I wonder if some of that too is even in that God's like, I'm going to hold both ends of the covenant. I'm going to do
yes,
all these things. All you have to do is seek me. And when you don't, sometimes you're gonna catch my gaze and I'm gonna change your world in a way that adjusts you, that catches your attention, that reminds you to look for me.
Yeah.
Um, like, I mean, that God's like, I'll just do every part of it, just every part.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I have felt that I have been there in seasons where, uh, I don't know. I'm not seeking or I'm busy or I'm whatever. And then in whatever moment in his grace and his mercy, he's like, taps you on the shoulder and is like, let me remind you,
Yeah.
I'm right here. And I'm like,
Right.
I wasn't even looking. And I wonder how much I've missed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And our world starts changing,
yeah,
transforming.
yeah, yeah.
Thank the Lord. So as we wrap this up, Jay, what would you say is a Kairos for you from this week, and what are you hearing from God, and how are you invited to respond?
Well, I kind of feel like that was a Kairos. So I need to sit with that for a minute. There's something
Well,
about,
I could start if you wanted if you want to noodle on that for a second.
okay, go ahead.
Okay, so mine would be in this idea of seeking God's face and the covenant that God now through Jesus holds both sides. That I don't want to come at that with a blasé sort of attitude, like, well, now I have no responsibility.
Right.
But actually, it's the way that I can best, I suppose, articulate this as a Kairos for me is um, uh, God is a covenant making, covenant keeping God. He speaks identity into me. I've been created in the image of God. We talked about that last week and well, hopefully
A
forever.
lot
But
of
like
weeks.
I am created in the image of God, and so I'm created in such a way that um, uh, I would reflect the glory of God by just how He's created me. I
Hmm.
struggle sometimes to receive that and know that to be true, that my identity is firmly from God alone. And then there are times that I'll intentionally or unintentionally be formed by something else, or something will attach to my identity that is not from God. And it's the reminder that my identity first and only comes from God. And out of my identity, I so desire to be obedient to within that call, right? To reflect God's glory. And that don't want to attach anything else to that identity, but the way that I walk this out, the way that I'm obedient to who God is and who I am because of Him. I desire for those things to match up with, like, this is who God says I am. This is my identity in Him. And here's how He's called me to walk and to live and to be. And I want those, I desire for those to match. I don't want to skew it in a way where I'm like, well, I'm supposed to do this so that God would love me now. Or I'm supposed to practice this or walk this out or serve these people um, so that God would see me. and
Right.
I and I suppose that visual of, even like you said, God is uh, already looking,
Mhm.
waiting, and um, when we approach Him, He's running. He's running at us. He's running to us, and yeah, I desire for it to flow that direction and not the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. There's something powerful in the reminder of, maybe I'd say it like, uh, he's a God who seeks. I desire to seek God, but he's also a God who seeks, who watches, who's pursuing, I guess. Um, but in that, and this is funny because I don't know that how I didn't connect that dot before. There has been an echo for me of God sees, like God sees me. And this has been for the last number of weeks, consistently in all places, like God, like feeling seen by God. God, you see me, God sees me. Um, a God who sees is a God who seeks. So that I don't know why that I don't know why I didn't connect that before. But even in this, And the thing about that is that being seen by God helps me trust God. And that, I guess that's what I was gonna say, coming out of Sunday, that Kairos for me is yeah, I have felt for not an insignificant amount of time, I have felt just an unsettling um, in some different places and areas. And the reminder in Abram's story, the reminder from Marty in Abram's story of God, like, you actually, I'm not going to give you everything you need to know because you're going to mess this up. And I know that to be true of myself. There's no, I have no like idea that I could handle things better than God can. And yet sometimes I struggle with that. But I know that to be true. So yeah, God, like help me trust that you've shown me exactly what I need to see. And that because you're a God who sees, and maybe that's what that connecting piece is that maybe in some of that unsettling, it's like, okay, God, I trust you, but do you see what I'm sitting in right here? Do you see where I'm at? And so that reminder that God's like, yeah, I do see you. And I see you and I seek good for you, right? He even says to Abram, like, I'm going to give you a great reward. So in all of that, trusting that not only can God handle it and whatever, but it just, I don't know, it speaks to his character. And the more I understand about like what's ingrained in his character, not just the things he does, he makes covenants, he rescues his people, whatever, but that comes because of who he is. And that does not change. So I don't know, there's something in that, like, yeah. I guess the Kairos boiled down is like, God, do you see, I'm trying to trust you, but do you see? And he's like, yeah, I see.
Yeah.
You can still trust me.
Yeah, as I see fully. Yeah. And when we come to that, like, who doesn't want to follow? Who doesn't want to follow that leader on this journey? Who isn't like, I'm all in, God. If that's who you are,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I just don't want to be anywhere else.
Which then I'll just stop with this, I guess, because this hit yesterday as we were wrestling through some scripture in 1 Corinthians 2, where Paul's actually quoting from Isaiah, I think. This is so the scriptures say, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no mind has imagined what God has prepared for those who love him. And I wonder if he's like, as I'm here, like, yeah, but do you see? He's like, you don't see. You have no idea. You have no idea. And you would mess it up. If I told you, you would mess it up. So just, yeah, I don't know.
Trust him.
The God who sees.
It's a good word to end with. Good. Well, guys, thanks for joining us. And it's been good to just wrestle with what we're hearing from God in the text and how we're going to walk this out this week. We pray that this too is the conversations you're able to have as well beyond Sunday. So we'll see you next week. Take care.